Leigh Brown. This is Crazy Shit in Real Estate. And today we're going to go to the craziest real estate market on the planet, Manhattan, with someone who has not just survived, but has actually helped shape the city in her over 3 decades of real estate. Louise Phillips Forbes is with us today. I mean, I want to be part of her girl gang, and I think you're going to want to join it too. So enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you on the other side. You're listening to Crazy Shit in Real Estate. You'll be amazed at all these wild but true situations that others have found themselves in. Because on this show, you'll hear uncensored, unbelievable stories from the world of real estate. I'm Leigh Brown. Let's dive right in. Before you get the rest of the story, I'd love to share a quick message from today's sponsor. If you've never heard of Follow Up Boss, you're going to love it. It's going to get you organized in a way that will actually impact your business for profitability and for better excellence with those you're serving. For more information, go to followupboss.com/crazy. I love your hair, by the way. It's amazing.
Well, I was just going to say, I get to call that a blonde moment.
I mean, yours is what I want, but my hairdresser only lets me go this far because mine would fall out if I let him go that far. And I really want white hair.
You need to have a New York minute, and I'll take you to my gal.
Oh, so if you see this, I'm not cheating on you. See,
I love it. You have such great energy, and I'm going to end up talking like you all day because I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm just going to
Really?
Well, Lordy be.
Well, you will sell a lot more if you use this accent in Manhattan, because people are kind of attracted to it, and then they fall down the hole. They're like, I don't know what just happened. I'm like, you just spent all your money. It's fine.
Exactly. Well, it's really funny. I used to when I used to teach in real estate for new brokers way back when, I used to say that, own who you are. And I am Southern. And whenever I talk about money, my accent comes back because we were raised to not talk about money.
I know.
And the first thing you do is, hi, how are you? How much do you make? How much do you want to spend? And how much you got? And it is the weirdest thing. And, but when I say, well, all I need is another 5,000, it seems to have a softer touch. But I will say a lot of the guys didn't think I was very sharp. So It was interesting to experience that. And, over the years, I'm 30, I've been here since 1980 something. So my accent just appears every once in a while.
You've been there since shoulder pads and power suits, my friend.
Well, before that, I was a unitard, cowboy boots and prairie skirt when I got into real estate. And that is a true story. So
were you in the village?
No, I didn't need to be in the village. Honey, that's all I knew. So it's really funny. I talk about my first days when I teach at Rebney or something, when I was like, just keep coming back because I made $8,400 my first year, And when I got my first job, I moved here to be a dancer. Like I used to say 10 pounds ago. Now it's maybe 25, 30. But I think that we do whatever we need to do to live in the arts that we love, and the creative energy in New York is just extraordinary. And anyway, I modeled, I bartended, I catered, I did all these things. And so I was bartending and I had injured my back. And this girl was like, you would be great in real estate. You remember what everybody drinks. You're so nice. And I was like, just call my friend. And I called her friend and he was like, yeah, you want a job? I called my brother. I said, I got a job in real estate. He's like, that's commission only. I was like, oh, no, I didn't know that.
But they want me. If you audition all the time, the fact that somebody wants you is a big win.
Amen, honey. And I didn't have number 427 on my chest. So that was nice.
It was 428. We won't talk about that.
Exactly.
All right. So what kind of dance?
Well, I danced for 2 small dance companies down south, and they were really jazz ensembles. I studied with Martha Graham. I used to go to American Dance Festival every year.
Like the Martha Graham, like you were in this space with her?
That's how old I am. Actually, it was her 80th birthday, and she was honored at American Dance Festival at Duke in North Carolina. And she came to our class, and her presence filled the room. It was so extraordinary. But no, I can't say I knew her, but I was.
You can. You were in the same physical space as an icon, like beyond an icon, a legend. Oh my God. I'm not a dancer and I know who she was.
Yeah. But I got to New York, and like everybody, it's a hustle. And, I think the off-Broadway gigs, or the industrials, what they used to be called industrials, where you become the entertainment for, let's say, the top 400 Colgate salespeople or whatever. And you go in and you do a 7-minute break between dinner. And, my paychecks were like $118. I was not paying my rent, let's be clear.
But that money still spends and you got to dance. So would you ever audition for the Rockettes? Please say you did.
No.
Oh.
My blessing and my curse, my blessing of being dyslexic. So I'm terribly dyslexic.
Okay.
Which means I don't really hear very intricate music, but I feel it. So I was always a solo dancer because of that, or often. But on the other side of that, I had no idea that my spatial memory is like Rain Man. So being in real estate is good because if I've seen a space once, I've seen it a million times. And I remember when people moved their kitchen from one side to the apartment to another, and they were like, I was like, I've been in this apartment before. And they're like, I've owned it for 17 years. I was like, that's it. I know, you know what I mean? It's kind of bizarre.
But really cool bizarre. So talk to me about this, the time you've been in real estate. I mean, you've watched Manhattan grow. You've watched areas of town go from less desirable to wildly popular. And the example I can give you is I used to live in Murray Hill. I lived at 37th and Lex. And it was a little sketch when I lived there in the 90s. And when I took my son back a few years ago, there were two of us moms. The boys wanted to go to New York. So we took them. I'm like, well, let's go where mom used to live. And I'm like,
did you go to the W Hotel?
It's schwanky over there. I'm like,
yep.
There were a whole bunch of us living in one little cheap apartment.
Yes, well, you're not alone. That's still happening today.
Well, it should, but we won't discuss how young people should live like that because it would make them have a better appreciation instead of being so coddled by their parents. That's a whole different discussion.
Your mouth to God's ears. So, yeah, I mean, for myself, I'm now locked under probably 5.5 billion in sales. And I have built or converted about 30, 32, 33 buildings. So one of the great privileges in the 90s when my first development project is to become an anchor in a borderline neighborhood. So in the West Village, there was absolutely no doorman condos on 8th and Hudson, which is today like Charles West 10th Street. And the developer was referred to me and they had designed 74 studios and 1 bedrooms. And I was like, I walked in the room and I was like, no, guys, we're not building this. We're not building this. You need to have all 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. They were like, wow, how many development projects have you done? I was like, none. I know people.
I know.
I was like, I know people. So I think reluctantly, they redesigned the building to be 22 units. I sold them off of paper, which had not been done in the 90s. And it was the beginning of a very long romance with development. Because of my dyslexia, I can walk in a space. And, my largest client, I've converted a bunch of rental buildings that were like turn of the century, pre-war beautiful buildings. And we walked in like one up the street from where I live on 84th and West End. We walked in, I get to see one apartment. It's not very attractive. And we went to the back of 5 napkins in the burger joint. And we're like looking at $1,100 a foot, this much construction. I was like, okay. And he literally called the guy, shook hands, bought it for $55 million. I was like, wait a minute, you just made that decision based on this napkin? So it's a little scary, but it's exciting to be from the beginning of a concept and help put to the creative team together and understand and really read the market. And I get to not only give birth to these amazing apartments, but giving birth to an entire community, which is really cool.
So how did you wind up in that development end of things after getting your start? And were you one of the first female developers at the time, or one of few? Or
I wasn't even the developer. I was just doing the marketing. So I was their broker that was going to be doing the on-site sales. Okay. But having the mind of a developer, when you start your career in new development as somebody who is navigating it day to day with the developer, you learn so much. My knowledge on construction, my knowledge on, tax,
sure,
the history of J51s and 421As and how those certificates can be acquired or not, and the laws and how they change. It's really exciting. And how to beat the system on FAR and buying adjacent air rights. It's just all so not normal scope for a residential broker. So it's a privilege.
I mean, honestly, like what you're describing here would be a very few Manhattan brokers, much less the rest of the real estate space, which is totally glazed over now, and heard you go, wah, 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 because in our traditional neighborhoods outside of New York, it's a wildly different space, but you're in a fascinating market. So you've talked about conversions a couple of times. And of course, when we look at New York City, there's a lot of legislative and regulatory burdens that fall on property owners when you look at rent controls, when you got the rent control units, you've got co-op boards, which I still don't understand the co-op board thing and how they get away with judging people can or can't buy in the building. I mean, it's wild. So talk to us a little bit.
The whole premise of a co-op, unfortunately, was the opportunity to have a private club vertically. So you're buying, just like you buy shares in IBM, you're buying shares in this brick and mortar. And then the board can totally decide. And honestly, if we're going to all be real here, it was set up specifically for opportunities to discriminate.
Oh, of course. I mean, I look at that and I'm like, I hated, oh my gosh, middle school. I'm like, it's the mean girls. The mean girls would never have let me in their building.
Well, good thing they're not in charge, honey. So that's a whole evolutional process because I learned my business in that first job I got where I learned I was commission only. I learned how to flip tenant rights. So a conversion is a rental building where the landlord decides to convert it to a co-op, historically co-op, but more recently condos. And so they would go to these rent controlled or rent stabilized tenants and say, hey, this apartment, I'm selling the whole vacant apartments. I'm going to renovate them and they're going to be $250,000. But if you want to buy your apartment, it's going to be $50,000. So I would then reach out to the tenants and I would say, sign your contract. We'll get an assignment to assign your contract. All the sponsor cared is he wanted 15% to convert the building. And so it was a win-win. And more importantly, I learned how these buildings operate from the inside out. And that was knowledge. Today, I consult many co-ops and try to help them get out of their own way when they get too restrictive. The trend of late has been condominiums because you could get much more money than you can for a co-op because people don't want to be in charge, other people to be in charge of their destiny. In a condominium, one of the things that there's a phenomenon that occurred that not many people understand, and that's why we all need to vote, is that policies impact. And so we've had 12 years of Bloomberg, our Mayor Bloomberg, who rezoned 40% of the landmass of New York City, giving birth to neighborhoods at 40%.
That's not a very well-known stat outside the city. 40% got rezoned. That's insane.
That's amazing. You have the whole 6th Avenue fashion corridor that has all these high rises because the FAR and the height restrictions were lifted. It didn't have to be industrial, didn't have to be commercial. It could be residential. In addition to that, we have the High Line.
Love the High Line.
The High Line's amazing. You can see the projects related projects for the Hudson Yards, which is something like 17 million square feet. And you also have Essex Crossing in the Lower East Side. So the Lower East Side, which I just learned this cocktail trivia, the thickest bedrock in all of New York City is the Lower East Side, which is why the fabric of that neighborhood is filled with low-rise buildings. But Essex Crossing was a partnership of mixed use rezoning for gentrification. So for the elderly housing, rental, that's probably our most diverse immigrant history that we have. It's such an amazing place. And to see it buzzing with a low-rise fabric is very exciting. But all of that's as a result of Bloomberg. And after Bloomberg, we've had 8 years of a very liberal position who weren't fans of real estate, which actually every transaction that is done is a source of income and touches like between 11 and 13 jobs.
Absolutely.
So it's the unintentional consequences that policies with the intention, I'm sure the intentions are good, to provide housing for those who can't afford to buy. And I appreciate that. But the unintentional consequences of changing the policies to not allowing the rental policy, landlords now, and I don't remember the name of the law, but it was in June of 2019. And they now conversions, you no longer need only 15% of tenants, insider or vacant apartments to be sold, but you need 51%. And the dichotomy of that is that no tenants association will ever allow that to occur because they're going to be not reasonable. So the government's, New York State, New York City has lost, I don't even know, the billions of dollars of tax revenues just for the last 3 years. I'm doing currently one of the last conversions that'll ever happen. And it's on the Upper West Side at 393 West End Avenue on 79th Street. And we're going to be selling, probably partially because of COVID, we'll be selling almost 80% of the building because so many tenants did end up leaving. So I don't know. I think that that's an interesting data point because I think it's probably we're missing 75% of that new unit inventory.
Well, and it's one of the top conversations in a lot of municipalities around the country of what do we need to do to make sure there's diversity of supply? Because when we talk about the lack of housing availability, it's that we need diversity of price point. And so we can hit people in different places. There's got to be a place to help somebody, and then your workforce housing and your move up and your families and your downsizers. And there's all of this need across the marketplace, which means no one policy is ever going to be a one size fits all, but they need realtors and brokers at the table to say, hey, let's look at the unintended consequences of this policy or that policy, and then showcase the success stories of when you get more creative with your zoning, because zoning is used as a stranglehold so often, but it was built by people who were strangling something from years ago instead of thinking about how markets do have to have some fluidity to them because people's needs change.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question about what you were describing in the changing neighborhoods with these conversions.
Sure.
So when you're looking at a market that you were describing on the line, and we see this in a lot of our large cities, there's areas that have been neglected for whatever reason, capital hasn't been in there, but with the lack of housing and the lack of housing diversity, people come into an area to start making some changes. How did you thread that needle with the character of an existing neighborhood, knowing that change is going to happen? And so how do you effectively work it into where there's a win for everybody?
Look, I'll take one example. 240 East 10th Street was a building on the Lower East Side. It's on 1st and 10th Street. And it's right by that very famous Coyote Ugly bar. And it was housed. And in fact, the way this project became possible was there was a very famous theater called the Theater for the New City, which that they did. Sam Shepard did The Burning Bed with Farrah Fawcett. It was an amazing. I auditioned for Twyla Tharp there, just ironically, in 1986.
How many lives have you lived, woman? Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm only like 29, but
I was impressed, but holy smokes, Twyla Tharp, are you serious?
Yeah. So what happened was the theater was in distress and they had to do improvements. And so the city, which owned the land, basically sold the air rights with the agreement that you have this much FAR, the payment for the FAR will be, the theater will end up getting their theater. They will own it outright. And that was brilliant. I mean, we did a 16-story building. It was, you could not, at the time, I want to say that people wouldn't go there unless it was a value play. So when you were in the West Village, people were paying $1,000 a foot, maybe $900 a foot. I was selling them for $500 a foot. Today, they go for $2,000 a foot, $1,800 a foot. But we built very efficient apartments that had amazing views because of the fabric of the Lower East Side.
If you've ever wondered why some realtors do more business than others, then you pay attention to them and do what they do. In fact, one of my favorite friends in real estate is Deborah Beagle. She's in the Nashville area, and she will tell you, as managing broker of the Ashton Group, that the agents who join her team on Follow Up Boss are getting an average of 2 homes under contract in the first 90 days. If you want to be like Miss Beagle, go to followupboss.com/crazy. You'll be really glad you checked it out. And frankly, so will your clients, because they'll get to use you and be amazed by your real estate awesomeness. Go to followupboss.com/crazy. So it's honoring the area. Wow.
Honoring the area. Our neighbors were not happy for us. They were not happy because they just want their mom and pop shops, those Italian pastries. But there were the Turkish baths that are on the other side on between Second and Amazing. It's become very much part of New York and the evolution of that. So I feel privileged to be able to see how an anchor like that caused multiple smaller projects and some bigger projects. You can see what was happening 8 or 10 years later, entire block of rental buildings on Bowery and West Broadway. I did the same thing at 50 Madison Avenue. 50 Madison Avenue was like the rug industry. And I had a little 11-story building that we pulled a permit on right before they landmarked that street, was 26th Street between 5th and Madison. And it's at the corner of a 6-acre park called Madison Park, which has the highest endowment per capita, higher than Central Park West.
Really?
Yes, per capita. So the usage. And it was because Danny Myers had Shake Shack there. And I'm telling you, Credit Suisse they had a video camera to see how long the line was. But my sponsor did not want to build, he wanted to build 3 apartments per floor. And I was like, absolutely not. You have to build 1 apartment per floor, key lock elevator. Where else are you buying on a park for these prices? So we were selling them for, I don't know, $3 million, $3.2 million, and they were 2,600 square feet. So it really becomes an opportunity for those adventurous people who want to really blaze into new neighborhoods that becomes an anchor of, we had 225 Fifth Avenue, 212 Fifth Avenue, 10 Madison, 1 Madison, all these developments that have happened in the last 15 years that would have never taken that risk without that experience or that experiment.
Okay, so first of all, I love that phrase that it's an adventurous place in real estate, because too often we talk about it as just risk, but there's an adventure to it. I love that. Going to have to steal that. And I'm also going to point out that I think it's hilarious you snuck in there Credit Suisse looking at the line, because they're looking at lines today, but for a whole different reason.
Amen.
They're a hot mess. And I'm going to poke at something, though, that you were talking about before, with this watching one building happen. And then that's part of the story in your future 8 and 10 years later. So like emotionally, Louise, how does it feel when you walk through these areas and you're like, and you get to point at these buildings and you know that you're a part of the future casting that was done because you were part of that adventurous crew back several years ago? Like, does it overcome you when you walk through these areas that you're part of the fabric of New York?
No, it just feels like a privilege. To me, what's the most exciting of all of that is the community that you give birth to, the people that trust you, that call you back and say, oh my God, what do you mean? I paid $2.6 million for this. It's worth $4.8 million. Like, I created so much wealth in my development projects with one particular friend who I did 9 transactions with, that she stopped working in corporate America and started her own business.
She picked up freedom from you.
I just think, but that is the gift of real estate, because not only is it an investment, but it's your home. So it's a user asset that has value that is intangible. And that's why it's a journey.
I mean, I wish more real estate brokers had that connection to what they're doing and not just the volume. It's like your volume is wildly impressive, but not nearly as impressive as you helped somebody get out of the corporate rat race through real estate, which is an entirely different story, same numbers, same volume, different focus. And that's so
I think it's necessary. Just interesting that, listen, if you were to talk to Kane, she would tell you that she had an amazing career at Coca-Cola. She had an amazing career at Fox News. But at some point, it's just nice to be in charge of your own life.
It wasn't hers. I mean, she could build things, but it's not hers like what her little empire is now.
Yeah. It's super cool. And by the way, she now went from a music sort of digitizing people's music for them and for restaurants and playlists and all this stuff, moving to creating emerging artist festivals at something called Stopover in Savannah. She is I got to send this to her because I love you, Kane.
But when you send this to her, you should make sure she knows that next year in 2023 is the 35th anniversary of Merle Fest, which is probably the best music festival in North Carolina. And so she's probably either been to or heard about Merle Fest. But
she's been there, honey. I'm sure she's been there.
You're about to announce the artist, and all of us are like, who is coming to Merle Fest? The big names are all going to come. It's going to be amazing. All right. So, of course, the whole premise of this show is the crazy stuff in real estate. And I could probably talk with you for hours because I love the depth of your knowledge on the political landscape and the future casting of the adventurous developers. Plus, you already poked briefly at how the co-ops were actually built in a discriminatory fashion, which I have to ask you a question about that. So how have they gotten away with this all these years? Like legit. So we look at fair housing and we want to make sure everybody's got a fair shake. How do the co-ops get around all that stuff?
Look, I think that the attitudes are not, listen,
and I don't think everybody's bad. I should make sure I'm not broad pushing, but
no, look, they didn't make up those rules. Some of these buildings were converted in 1954, and they were the ones that spearheaded all cash buildings at 1100 Park. No longer is an all cash building. It's a 50% cash building because I think they started to realize that you have got so much no summer. You can only do renovations in your 4,000 square foot apartment that hasn't been renovated for 63 years, but you have to do it in 3 months. So now you have this asset that should be a $15 million asset, but good golly Moses, I need to take 2 years to do it. And so I think that things like global pandemics are humbling on every front. And when you are that privilege becomes your curse and the asset that you have, had a fiduciary responsibility to maintain whatever those policies are or shape them and change them for better or worse. It's a humbling, that's the least Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue. They are the weakest piece of our market right now. And part of it is because people don't want to tolerate those restrictions anymore. So I think that they are, with the help of very sophisticated and smart, insightful brokers just being of service, are talking to them candidly and they're listening.
So yay, the upside of COVID, new conversations.
That is one of them. There are a million silver linings to it. But they're
always, if you look for them, you can find them. It's the people who don't look for them that drive me completely crazy because at some point you have to stop. Howard Stern cracking me up, has not left his place in 2 years and he finally emerges to go eat dinner. And I'm like, Howard, you're old, man. You gave up 2 precious years of the time you have left.
I don't know. How Beth managed that. Dude. his wife is such a sweetheart and don't know how she managed that one.
And for somebody that was always counterculture and so edgy that he got so pulled into one tiny perspective and couldn't break out of it, just kind of heartbreaking, but also a reminder, don't age if you can help it.
Also, it's just I think that is, again, I was just talking about, my friend wrote a book and I was talking about the idea that we can't control life. Mm-hmm. What we can control is how we react to it.
Exactly.
And that is every day a choice to look at your glass of water half empty or half full.
Yeah, and you're going to figure it out. Drink it, splash it, spill it, do something with it. Don't just look at it. Hey, so what is your friend's book? You want to plug her book? Is it good?
Always. Karen Duffy. She is an amazing human. It's called Wise Up.
Wow, I like the title.
And she has lived a very amazing life, but one of the greatest things that she would credit her life to was her son, Jack, who is a friend of my son's. And she has lived with a very serious, chronic, life-threatening disease that she's done it with such grace. And she decided to write these letters to her son. And it's really things like through the philosophers that she studied, loved, and lives her life by. There are things like that. Like we can't control what happens in life, but we can control how we react to it. And it's just beautiful. And at the very end of it, Jack writes her a letter back. And it's really beautiful. And she's doing amazingly. And she has so much life to live. But she's one of my million, I call girl gangs that I'm so blessed to know.
I'm so going to go look that up, and I'm going to make sure I have Kleenex nearby because it sounds like it gets dusty in the room at the end of that book. But what a great premise. And so, Karen, if you sell some copies here, just call Louise and thank her because we always love to pitch some new things here. Did you come with a story to tell, or did you want to just have a random conversation with me? Like,
I can do both, but I have a few funny things that I think I'm going to start off with my prairie skirt because I was wearing my green cowboy boots and my prairie skirt when I first got into the business, and I was doing no fee rentals, $700 for a 2-bedroom in New York City in a doorman building. And I had a couple, and literally across the street, this was on 108th in Amsterdam. Everybody knows the building who lives in New York because they know it. It's kind of a mafioso Yugoslavian sponsor who's now passed away. But across the street, there was a funeral home and there was a total drug deal going down. And they started shooting gunfire. And I'm literally like, come on, y'all, there's a ruckus going on. Let's come to this cul-de-sac right here. And they were looking at me like, where's the subway? I'm out of here. So that was one experience that I thought was interesting. That was 1989 or 90. Things have changed a lot, although they've kind of had a little bit like this. And then I'm going to have to tell the story, which I hope I don't offend anybody, but I was showing an apartment that there was somebody who was passing away. I mean, she was 105. She had a caregiver. And I was helping her family and I was showing it. And I prepare the people that she's an older person. She's lived an amazing life. She was 105. And I was like, but we're not going to talk in the bedroom because she might be resting. And her caregiver is sitting right next to her, reading the newspaper, this amazing West Indies woman. And so they walk in the bathroom and I'm just quietly standing there and I'm looking. I was like, her chest is not moving. And she's reading the paper. And I was like, I think there's something going on there. Yes, she had passed away. So those people did not buy that apartment.
Yeah, no.
I'm just going to say, but I didn't even know how to finesse that. So it just was what it was. And then I'm not even going to
go. No way to finesse that. That's we're going to head on now, and we'll pray for you.
There you go. Well, I can only say that I don't know how many people you hear the story where you walk in on people having sex or in the shower having sex, but that's happened to me not once but twice. So
due to your longevity in the business, Louise, I mean, I think the new agents, they've only experienced it once, but if you can survive, you get to see sex more than once, and Sex in the City is a real thing in real estate.
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm impressed that at 2:00 they can actually leave work and do that. But I guess people work from home now. I don't know.
I watched Mad Men. I watched John Hamm go have sex in the middle of the day so many times on that program. And it was obviously a documentary about New York, right?
I don't know, but I missed that boat.
I don't know. I think I could have lived in that era and I'd have been fine in that era, but who knows?
I don't know. You might have been a little much for that era, honey.
I don't know. It wouldn't have taken me as long as it took old Peggy to get her act together. She had kind of aggravated my nerves, but you always got your favorite characters on the program.
Amen. Amen.
Hey, Louise, if somebody wants to reach out to you about Manhattan real estate or just to come and drink from the well that is your amazingness, how do they find you?
You can find me at Weezy, WEZE _SEZ at Instagram. You could find me at louisephillipsforbes.com. And I don't know, I'm sure there's a lot of other ways, and call me on my phone.
But look, they heard you say Weezy and now they're all here and moving on up in their head. And so they can't even think straight.
I met my husband on a blind date, and my husband's very, very elegant, handsome, amazing man. And I met him. We did not get married till we were 40 and 40 something. And my first child at 42 and my second at 44. But we met on a blind date, took me to Des Artistes and brought me my favorite flowers and a suit. He was so handsome. And I was like, well, all my friends looking at the menu, all my friends call me Weezy. He's like, I will never call you Weezy. So, go figure.
And here, I thought you were going to have the last sentence of that story be, and his name is George. And then I would have just melted into a puddle. Because that would have been amazing.
I love being Weezy. And I love it when people say moving on up. Because, honey, when I moved to New York, I moved on up.
That was a great show, too. I wish we had more stuff like that with a really good positive message, hardworking people, make it happen. You got some bumbling neighbors, but you can love them anyway. Lots of good stuff out there.
We can live it every day because this is what we get to do.
That's right. We don't have to. We get to. Thank you for putting a nice little capstone on that. So before I let you go, all my guests need to put something nice about you down in the comments. You can also share your favorite episode of The Jeffersons now that we're winding up with a totally unrelated story, or talk about your being an adventurous developer. And you should vote below if you think Louise should let me into her girl gang, because I really want to be in the girl gang. And the next time I come to New York, then we'll go wander around and you can tell me all the stories.
You can always be a part of my girl gang, and we could hang when you're in the city.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for giving us so many different angles to think about, ponder, and be better because of.
Amen. Thank you.
All right, guys. Subscribe for more. We'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Okay, now don't forget to go try Follow Up Boss so that your business can continue to expand in professionalism, and then you can meet some more crazy people yourself. I really appreciate Follow Up Boss sponsoring this episode, but mainly I appreciate them for giving y'all double the free trial time with no credit card required. So make sure you go to followupboss.com/crazy and then let me know what you think. I'll see you guys next time. As always, I'm so super thrilled that you joined in for more crazy shit. And if you're a realtor, investor, inspector, lender, or just a regular human being who happens to have an unbelievable story that you need to tell the world about, or frankly, you just need to one-up the story you just heard, then make sure to DM me on Instagram at Leigh Thomas Brown, or tweet me at Leigh Brown, or frankly, any social network where you hang out. I'm there. And if you had some fun, then you totally want to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.